Welcome to the Lead Generation Podcast, where innovative entrepreneurs share their stories and secrets to success. It's time to take your digital marketing to the next level with your host, Bob Sparkins.
On today's episode of The Lead Generation, I'm excited to introduce you to Gia Laudi, a marketing and growth advisor for SaaS who has helped companies like MeetEdgar, SparkToro, MarketerHire, and Wistia grow sustainably. She's the co-author of Forget the Funnel, and in this episode, we dive into her journey to entrepreneurship, why customer-led growth is essential for recurring revenue companies, and how to get your ideal customers to fuel your marketing. Be sure to follow along with the transcripts, show notes, and more by visiting this and other episodes at leadpages.com/podcast. Now, let's jump into the conversation. Gia, welcome to this episode of The Lead Generation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob. I'm excited.
So we're going to dig into a lot of really cool, nerdy stuff around customer-led growth and how to grow sustainable companies, especially SaaS companies. Before we do that, though, I know that as an advisor to a lot of the clients that you work with, you impact their lives in some way. Can you pinpoint or highlight what is a way that you transform the lives of the clients you work with?
Yes. So there's a number of things that we do, but I think at the heart of it, it really comes down to helping companies, teams really get clear on who their best customers are and then how to reach and retain more of them. There's a lot of guesswork that goes into marketing and growth. We try to eliminate as much of that as we possibly can and make really informed decisions about what type of marketing we do, but also what kind of customer experiences we create for our customers and everything that sort of evolves from there as well. Customer marketing, expansion, retention. It really does come down to knowing who your best customers are, reaching, retaining more of them, high LTV, delivering lots of value. It's really about all of that.
Very cool. And I imagine that the breathing room that the leaders have after they've worked with you and Claire, kind of expands what's possible for them, right?
Yeah, it's a lot about clarity and alignment and getting clear on what's important and what the priorities should be. There's no shortage of ideas. When you think about marketing and growth, we all have lots of ideas. Everybody is marketed to. We all like to think of ourselves as marketers, marketing experts. There's a lot of experts in the space. There's a lot of ideas and, channels change and evolve. And at the end of the day, while none of these I would never claim that any of those tactics are, bad ideas. Where it gets challenging is that we have so many ideas. There's so many directions we could possibly go into. It's really a big challenge for teams to figure out, okay, what are the most valuable places for me to focus on? And the best way to get the answer to that question is to find out and learn from your best customers to figure out what's going to resonate most with them, what's going to be most valuable to them. It sort of eliminates a lot of the guesswork and gives you and the team a lot more clarity on what to focus on. And, in terms of marketing channels, of course, but also in terms of messaging, positioning, product marketing as well. So clarity, prioritization, that's really sort of the name of the game for us.
Very cool. Now, back in the day, before you've kicked off this journey that you've been on for the last few years, you were out of college. What kind of job did you first have? I know you made your way towards SaaS. Talk to us a little bit about that journey of being an employee, and then let's talk about your jump into being now an entrepreneur and an advisor.
Yeah, wow, you want to go way back. So I actually, out of college, I joined my father's retail business. And he had a large, still has to this day, a large retail florist. And I don't know if this is still true, but at the time, flowers were, I think it was like the fourth most purchased thing online behind porn and books. And I can't remember what number 3 was, but then it was flowers. So fiercely competitive space, a lot of sort of small local players, a lot of big players. And that's really where I sort of cut my teeth in terms of marketing and SEO. And what I didn't know at the time was conversion rate optimization and content marketing and social media marketing, and all of that was my sort of the breeding ground for everything that I'm doing now. And that was very early days. That was in 2000 to 2006 or 7. And then I joined Twitter, which is a very close to my heart issue right now. And everything sort of changed. And I shifted from being very focused on, fighting the good fight for like small brick and mortar businesses, having an online presence. I even wrote I even wrote a column for, an industry publication on the topic of online marketing back then for local businesses. But Twitter did shift a lot of things for me. And actually, I shifted over into working for an agency for a little while, which really sort of opened up the gamut in terms of the types of businesses that, I was able to work with. But specifically, Twitter exposed me to this like tech community and startup community locally here. And once I saw that, I couldn't sort of unsee it. It was when I was sort of exposed to the software as a service business model, which is all based on recurring revenue. And I was like, yes, my people, the people who understand post acquisition marketing, the people who understand that marketing has a role to play in revenue growth and, isn't a cost center and all those things. And I sort of decided from that moment on that SaaS was the business model for me and I was never going to go back. And so I was freelancing and consulting at the time for a number of tech companies. And then eventually I did go in-house. And I was in-house at Unbounce for 5 years, leading marketing there. Learned a ton, definitely got to experiment with, a ton of, my own limitations. I grew a ton. And that is also where I was exposed to, honestly, the sort of realities of how challenging it is to not only do good marketing, but run an effective marketing team and how to sort of make good decisions and prioritize and get that level of clarity. I often describe the way that I was working there like a chicken with my head cut off. It was, I wanted to do all the things. I wanted to make everybody happy. I wanted to, under promise and over deliver. And it was just such a wild sort of environment. And actually, while I was there, I was lucky enough to be so Lenny Rachitsky, who is quite big in the product management space. I happened to know him. And I had this light bulb moment when I was visiting the Airbnb headquarters. He was a product manager there at the time. And I was visiting him and I went down to the product manager sort of workspace at the Airbnb office. And I saw their customer journey map sort of taped to the wall. And remember, I had been operating like this chicken with my head cut off, couldn't prioritize, had a team of people looking to me saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to hit our targets this month? And it sort of shifted the way I really thought about marketing as less about sort of life cycle and MQLs and SQLs and more, and building awareness, of course, but more about like, how do we deliver value and measure our ability to deliver value at these critical sort of milestones in our customers' relationship with us. So it very much shifted the way that I was thinking. We took it, very, very seriously and we operationalized it internally. And it was really, really helpful for us. So that was sort of all what led up to what I'm now doing, which is Forget the Funnel, working with Claire Selentrop, my business partner, as you mentioned. And her and I we think a lot about B2B SaaS companies and really helping them figure out how to identify those customers and how to operate, and by doing some customer research, which I recognize is a bit of a dirty word, but then how to operationalize that research so that we actually turn it into something that's actionable, that a team can run with and be really effective with. So that's our sort of MO, is do away with useless customer research or customer research that goes nowhere, and also really help teams to figure out what's important and stop, throwing spaghetti at the wall style marketing.
Yeah, I think most people who are in marketing know that they should do market research, but it's a little bit intimidating. We've recently had Rand Fishkin on the podcast, who I know is someone you're familiar with, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
We got Tracy Wallace coming up soon from Klaviyo, who also is big in market research. We have Talia Wolf from the past. So this is something that we've been trying to beat the drum for a while. And we hope that you're able to convince people of this as well. Why do people, I think, freeze up when they hear the term market research, even though they know they need to do it?
So one thing that I will sort of clarify and say out of the gate and context-wise in terms of how I think about this is that I do tend to prioritize customer research over market research, especially for SaaS businesses who are trying to get clarity around who their best customers are. There's a couple of reasons for that. And I do not think there's anything wrong with doing market research or audience research. I'm a huge fan of it, but I generally do believe that it should follow customer research. And that customer research should sort of inform what type of audience research and market research that we do. And actually, SparkToro is one of the examples of companies that we have worked with where we were able to do customer research and continue that into market research and audience research and use, it was very meta, but use SparkToro for itself, right? It got very inception-y
Right.
there. But the reason that we tend to prioritize customer research is because those are the people who had a problem, they were out in the world, that they experienced in the problem that you solve. They made a decision to choose you. And so what were those reasons, right? And they get value from your product as it is today. And also they obviously have a willingness to pay because they're paying you. So it's sort of this validated, sort of higher quality type of person to learn from because they are your best customers. Now it's important to segment. So anybody who, raises concerns or might be a little bit nervous to conduct customer research, generally that's what I sort of reference first, right? These are your customers that are very happy, right? They're getting a ton of value from your product today. They'd be really upset if you went away. They want you to be successful. And so in general, we find that customers are very happy to provide us with feedback and, participate in the evolution and the growing of our businesses because effectively they stand to benefit and they get a ton of value. So as long as you're talking to customers who are happy, I mean, look, there's conversations to have around win-loss analysis and surveying your customers who have canceled and things like that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about really is identify who your best customers are and talk to them and ask them questions about what's important to them. And there's specific types of questions that we can get into when if you want to get into that. But
Yeah.
really, at the end of the day, if you're talking to your happy customers, what we find is they're very, very willing to jump in and provide feedback and participate in the evolution of your business.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant. We have a think tank customer advisory board that we meet with quarterly. I can echo that sentiment. And I
Yeah.
want to dig into some of those questions that you may want to
Mhm.
ask your customers. I want to take a quick detour though first,
Yep.
because there are some people listening who don't have customers yet, right? They are
Yep.
getting ready to launch or have been around for a little bit, but they just don't have more than a handful of people they've worked with. How
Yep.
can they take a playbook from you so that as they get customers in the door, they're able to
Mhm.
fuel that research a little bit faster than those that do
Yeah.
not do this?
So in that case, what I would say, I mean, you're sort of, you're learning from your future customers. And yes, going out and identifying where your customers are out in the world and trying to provide some value and in return, collect some feedback. It's absolutely a viable thing to do. The one thing that I would prompt everybody to think about before they do that, though, is ultimately what is the problem that your business is trying to solve and get very, very clear on that space. You can't go into a research project, especially this type of research project, with the solution in mind, right? It can't be like, well, do they care about this thing? Is this thing going to be valuable to them? It really has to be about them. And conducting research that's very much focused on what's valuable to them, what do they care about, what keeps them up at night, not specifics about your specific offering. So that's a helpful lens to go into it with. And then find out where they're hanging out. There's lots of tools, the best of which definitely I would say is SparkToro for finding out what those watering holes are. And then there's a lot you can do on the social listening side of things. But if you are participating in those watering holes and providing value and learning as you're listening, it shouldn't be too big of a leap to eventually ask for some folks to jump on a short call with you. You just got to be really respectful of their time. Make sure that you're well prepared. Have a sort of structured approach that you're taking with your research, so that you're not wasting anybody's time. And what we have found when people raise, and this sometimes comes up on the customer side too, let alone on the audience side, is my response rate is not high enough. Should I be offering incentives? That comes up a lot. And in general, on the customer research side, we say typically, and this is not always the case, but typically we find that incentives aren't necessary for all the reasons that I already mentioned. But on the audience side of things, if you are going to be asking people to get on a call with you, even a short call, it could be really interesting to offer an incentive, but not maybe an incentive like a $50 Amazon gift card or something like that, because you could be incentivizing, behavior that isn't going to be advantageous to you in the long run. So we do find that offering to compensate people for their time can work quite well, and letting them, sort of name their price, and that gives you a choice on what you want to do. Or what we've also found that an idea that we love and that we have used a few times ourselves is offering to make a donation in that person's name. Now, obviously you need a budget to do this type of thing, but those are two ways that you could possibly incentivize people to spend a little bit of time with you. What we have found on the offering to compensate people for their time is that people will feel very respected, and they'll be more likely to say yes. But in most cases, they won't even take you up on that offer. But it can go a very long way in terms of being respectful of their time.
Yeah, I love that idea. Love to get into some questions now that you have your customer research folks do, and you obviously when you're working with companies. What might be an off the wall question, if there is one, that you think most people just don't really think about, that the customers that they would have would be eager to share a response to?
I don't know if I would consider any of them off the wall. So the style of research that we do is rooted in the jobs to be done framework, right? That's sort of the jobs to be done theory or framework, whatever you call it. That's basically this idea that people buy your product because they're buying the sort of better version of themselves. They're not buying your specific solution. They're buying what your product enables them to do, ultimately that better life. So the research that we do is very focused on uncovering what is that job to be done. And that's sort of goes back to what I mentioned before, where I said, if you can do this sort of foundational type of research of what is our best customer's job to be done, and get that foundational sort of story and understanding about your customers. There's a lot of nuance in there that we can dig into for sure. But when I was referencing it earlier, it's because once you have that foundation, there's a lot of directions you can go from there. You can say, okay, now that I understand who our best customers are, I want to dig in specifically into the people who are out in the world experiencing this problem. And then you can do follow-on research to dig in a little bit further. Or you might want to dig in further on, expansion strategies. So we understand that this is our core, our best customers' job to be done. Now let's find out what they need help with next. And you could do a type of follow-on research to find out what your expansion opportunities might be, for that customer. So I wouldn't say that there's any sort of surprises in the type of research that we do because it is so structured. But in general, what we're looking for is we want a sort of documentary of their life, right? What was going on in their world that led them to seek out a solution? How were they solving their problem before? Because then we understand maybe direct competitors, but more than likely some sort of alternative solutions that they're using, right? So we know what solution we're asking people to fire in order to hire our product, right? So having that understanding of what life was like before, understanding what they did after that, right? So once they made that decision, where did they go? Who did they talk to? What were their watering holes? What were their influences in their life? And then once they found you, what was it about your solution that convinced them that you were going to be able to solve their problem? And then furthermore, we ask questions around when you signed up, what was that sort of magic moment for them that they said, yes, this is going to work for me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep investing in this thing. And then, questions about, now that you have our product or solution in your life, what are you able to do now that you weren't able to do before? And so we get, I'm likely picking up on this, is this sort of documentary of what was going on in their world, right? Through their lens. We didn't ask anything about our product. We didn't talk about features. We didn't ask any sort of specifics. It's really open-ended questions to find out, what the why behind the things that they were doing, so that we can figure out how to sort of map that to what we do and make it really, really obvious to them. So we can pick up what they say is valuable, and then we can map it to the specific parts of our product or our solution that delivers that value. And that's how we come up with really sort of resonant positioning and messaging to really be effective when we do go out in the market and market with them, to them, or when we, the copy that we use on our website, or even the early product experience and the product onboarding or activation experience. What do we use there? All those answers can come out of what were, very open-ended questions. But once we identify those patterns, we can really see Our best customers are coming to us because they are, in this situation where they're experiencing this very specific sort of struggle. They're looking for these very specific things in a solution. And then this is what they're now able to do that they weren't able to do before. And because we've got that picture, we can really lean into how to create that value and communicate that we can create that value.
Before I ask my guest my next question, I'd like to ask you one. Yes, you that's listening. Do you need a new landing page for your business? With Leadpages, you can launch your page with ease. There's no need to hire expensive developers. Simply select your template, customize the look of your page with your own text and images, click publish, and you're done. Go to leadpages.com/free trial to try Leadpages for free for 14 days and build your own high converting landing page today. That's leadpages.com/free trial. Now, let's get back to our conversation. That's awesome. What I'm hearing from you and what I love about this is that you're taking what could otherwise be a hypothetical pursuit of information, i.e., audience market research on the front end of, top of funnel, trying to find people that might fit our product or service, and you're turning it into those that did already show up, and you're giving them the opportunity to tell you why they showed up and why in those experiences they continue to show up.
That's right.
Talk to us a little bit about why, this concept that you and Claire are pursuing or promoting is forget the funnel. Why is that such an important thing for people who are in SaaS or not in SaaS should be taking on?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right, and it's really sort of you can think of it like reverse engineering sort of success, right? It's like taking that ideal customer and then going, okay, tell me what you did, like what was that experience, and then look back at what good looks like and what good looked like for them, and sort of at scale across all of your customers to figure out what is that most appropriate and truthfully, like highest converting experience that we could possibly create for them. The forget the funnel concept is really, I mean, it's rooted in its heart in this sort of idea that marketing doesn't end at acquisition. People who think about marketing as ending at acquisition are really missing out, particularly recurring revenue businesses. If you are in a recurring revenue business and you think about growth as acquisition, you are not going to be in business for very long, because recurring revenue model is about building long-term relationships that are valuable to your customers. And, high LTV means for customers as well, in addition to you. So really understanding that customer and building a sort of valuable long-term relationship with them is the name of the game for software as a service. More and more, even e-commerce brands and service providers think in this way as well, rightfully, right? It's not just about bringing a new customer in the front door. There's tons of stats on how much more an existing customer is worth to you than bringing somebody new through the front door. So I don't need to talk about that. I'm sure there's lots of studies that have been done that prove that. And I think that, thinking about customers as being something thinking about customers as something that is in a funnel is sort of, it just doesn't do the relationship justice at all. I mean, I don't think I need to convince anybody of that. It's just, there's a relationship there, and it's cyclical, and it's meaningful, and it's not just about pushing somebody through, these buckets or these predetermined buckets. That's also my big issue with pirate metrics and typical life cycle metrics that we tend to use, is that they're very focused on the business. They're not as much focused on the customer. So we tend to think about, is somebody marketing qualified or sales qualified, but that has no bearing on whether or not we're delivering value to that individual. So that's another reason why why I pick on the funnel a lot. And also for SaaS and for digital products, we have, I mean, it's 2023, and we have all the tools in our toolbox now to measure value beyond just credit card entered. And we know how people are using our product, and we can come up with and identify much more meaningful KPIs. So this relationship that we have with our customers, right? What are their sort of, leaps of faith or milestones in their relationship with us? And then furthermore, how do we know that we're delivering value to them at each of those milestones? there's lots of ways for us to do that, especially in software, right? Did they hit this sort of critical threshold of product usage? Did they activate in our product? Did they get value? Were they delivered value in some way? The way that we measure activation, but is one thing and very important. And I don't take away from that, but it's hard to even think about how do we measure activation without thinking about how do we measure what a happy, healthy customer looks like? How does a happy, healthy customer use our product day in and day out? Whether or not they log in or not might be completely irrelevant, right? Because you might have the type of product that is more successful when your customers don't log in. Then what do? Does weekly active user mean anything there? Daily active users means nothing in that scenario. So we have to identify what a meaningful measure of sort of engagement and value, our customers' relationship is with us, so that we can do a couple things. We can measure our ability to help them move forward and get more value, but also if they fall out, we also have a way to trigger, sort of re-engagement or, get in touch with them and make sure that, we do what's needed to be done to help them get back into that experience. And I think a lot of companies, I know a lot of companies, the software companies that we work with, very, very few of them are measuring product engagement in a meaningful way. They're relying on just, these catch-all sort of KPIs, like, sign up, credit card entered, and daily active or weekly active. And that's their measure of success, when they could be doing so much more if they were actually making sure and being able to sort of measure their ability to help customers reach those value moments. So, I mean, that's my funnel rant forever and ever.
Well, I love it because what you're doing is you're helping you're putting a lens on the success people have by using the product or the service that you're selling, and you're shooting for wins, right? You're not just trying to get revenue in the door. You're trying to get people to be successful in their life, which, hits home for us here at Leadpages. One of the things that we took on, I don't remember if it predates our work with you or not, but the idea of a North Star metric as something that, we can focus on to know, are our customers using our product in a way that it's both intended and that increases value over time, will lead to referrals, will lead to upgrades, all that kind of stuff that do hit the revenue goals.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that idea of North Star metric for a moment? Because I think that might be a new term for many of our listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, I find a North Star metric at the end of the day, what it is a tool for teams, right? It's to help multiple people responsible for, a holistic customer experience really be focused on what matters and delivering value, like you said. So in your case, I mean, I can't say this for every company, but sometimes North Star metrics, and I hope in most cases that North Star metrics are really sort of rooted in delivering customer value. That's not always the case. I don't know what yours is at Leadpages, but I'm going to assume that it's associated with your customers getting value, and that's great. But it's sort of a top line singular measure of a success in a holistic way. I think what is especially valuable about customer experience mapping and identifying leading indicators of success is they all sort of roll up to that North Star metric. They're all in service of that North Star metric. But why I like KPIs at each of the milestones in a customer experience is because it really helps the team compartmentalize and think about and go deep on delivering really, really great customer experiences. So those team members who are responsible for product onboarding, they can very much focus on that specific part of the customer journey, not disconnected from the rest of it, right? In how it sort of relates to the rest of it, but it's still very much rooted in, what are the sort of motivations, objections, that, anxieties that customer may be experiencing or feeling. What are the success gaps, right? What's happening inside of the product, but just as importantly, what's happening outside of the product, right? What might they be doing, in their inbox? What solution might they be offboarding from or, needing to fire in order to adopt yours? What other stakeholders might be involved? And that customer experience mapping is very, very helpful for basically aligning everyone around this holistic customer experience so that the individual team members responsible for them can build really effective strategies for influencing that, portion of the customer experience. And that's true. I'm only picking on activation right now, but the same is true on the customer marketing side, right? Those teams who are thinking about, okay, our customers have solved their primary customer job, but now how can we help them? How can we help them be even more successful with our product? What are the other toys in the toy box we can now show them, parts of the product that we were holding back on a little bit at the beginning because it would have been too much for them? What can we now show them our product can do that helps them be even more successful? So it just helps sort of compartmentalize, but helps the team be really, really strategic in a meaningful and also very measurable way. But again, all at the service of that North Star sort of KPI or that North Star metric.
Very cool. And this obviously applies primarily in your work to SaaS companies, as most of the things that we've been talking about. But there are analogous items over in service industries where you want the repeat buyer, right? You want the repeat customer to come in the door. So can you speak to that? Like, what comes to mind for you if someone's a coach or a consultant and they do rely on recurring revenue, but from the delivery of a service instead? How do you help them to translate what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think from that perspective, and I put that hat on when I think about our business. Of course, I don't tend to put it on when I think about our client's business. But if I try to put that hat on for a second, really the same is all still true. Something that I didn't actually mention earlier that is important for all types of businesses, but could be very advantageous within this specific context is, what is the sort of urgent problem that your clients are trying to solve? And think about ways to lower the barrier to help them solve that very specific and urgent problem, and then grow from there. So don't try to, sell them on. I mean, this is true with software. It's just as true with software, actually. But don't try to, out of the gate, convince a potential client that you're going to be able to solve all of their problems and that you do all of these things. And there's a big menu of, services that you offer, and you can do it all for them. And therefore, they should just bring you on because, all of this can be solved under one roof. You tend to be much better served, and this is true for every business. You're much better served by focusing on what is the urgent problem they have especially high willingness to pay for, right? Especially because, when we're talking about the sort of lift at the front end and making a big decision when you're talking about services, generally the ask is bigger than in a software situation. So helping lower the barrier to entry, build a relationship with them, solve a very urgent problem for them very, very quickly, and then let the sort of relationship grow from there. And think about what's the next most natural thing that a client might need after you've solved that initial sort of urgent problem for them. And honestly, the customer experience mapping absolutely applies in this case as well because of that.
So I'm curious, as you hear the customer research, the responses to your questions and all this stuff, sometimes you hear things that lead you to not want to do what the customer wants. How do you know when what the customers are telling you is not in best interest of your customer and in service of your company or your brand?
That is such a good question. It's so interesting. Honestly, I've never run into that, probably because of the type of research that we do is so rooted in what is that, because it's so rooted in customer jobs, in the jobs to be done sort of framework. Because if you're learning from the customers that you want more of, right? If genuinely the voices that you're listening to are the voices of those customers that you want to like clone, so to speak, they're the customers who, I hate this expression, but I probably overuse it, but you'd have to pry your product out of their cold, dead hands. If those customers are telling you something on repeat, right, and you're hearing it over and over and over again, you should probably be listening. Right? Because if they're telling you something that you don't want to hear, they're probably not your best customers. So there's a balancing act a little bit with research. And I think that one of the objections to research often is like, the faster horses, the erroneously quoted, if we asked customers what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. Like, first of all, that's not true. That's not a real quote. But even so, there's just because a customer says it doesn't mean you have to do it. Because if you say just like a customer and they haven't been prioritized or they haven't been segmented into a group of customers you actually care to listen to, then don't listen to them. They don't matter, right? And if there's people who get value out of your product today that don't fall into that bucket of ideal customer, that's fine. If they're getting value from your product, that's fine. Let them buy your product and pay for your product and by brute force get value out of it in whatever way they want to. That does not mean you need to solve for them. That does not mean you need to prioritize them. With a lot of companies that we work with, we have to make a decision on, do you want to go a sales-led route or do you want to go a product-led route? And it's not a binary. It's not that you can only do one or the other, but you do sort of need to put one foot in front of the other and make a decision about which experience you want to build first. And so what I often tell founders and the companies that we work with is you have a decision to make. You can evolve your product in one way and build your team and develop your product in a way that goes one direction or the other. You have the decision. I remember this was a very real thing for Rand when he first launched SparkToro. He made a very deliberate decision to focus on a very certain customer set, and he was very deliberate in ignoring another. So I think it's a decision that you have to make. As long as you care about that customer and are hell bent on solving a very valuable problem for them, keep them in your mind's eye. Their opinion matters. Forget everybody else.
Awesome. We're coming to the end of our time, Gia. This has been so fascinating. I do want to make sure people know about your upcoming book that you're currently in pre-sales for. Maybe you're listening to this, it's already been launched, but talk to us about the Forget the Funnel book and the work that you and Claire are doing with that.
Yeah. So the book really, the idea behind the book is we wanted it to be a very sort of digestible and practical. So it's a very step-by-step sort of process that we go through. Everything that I'm talking about, there's a process involved in it, right? Identify who your best customers are, figuring out the problem that they're trying to solve, operationalize that and measure, find your measures of success, and then basically take advantage of the opportunities that you then become aware of, all those growth opportunities, because you understand your customer so much better and you now have a measure of success for it. So that process, the customer-led growth process, and the framework that we've developed and we use with all the companies that we work with is what we cover in the book from beginning to end, honestly. But what we try to do as much as possible is make it very, very practical. So there's a little bit of theory in there because there needs to be a little bit of theory, but for the most part, it is like, no, this is what you do first. This is what you do second. This is what you do third. There's a lot of follow-on materials as well that we provide, templates, checklists, email templates, survey templates, interview questions, things like that. There's a lot of follow-on materials to make it really, really practical. But we wanted the book to be readable in just a couple of hours right out of the gate, so somebody can get from beginning to end in a very short amount of time and really understand that, oh, okay, now I'm ready, now I get it, and I'm going to go back and go step by step through the process. So that's really sort of the idea of the book.
I love it. And it sounds to me like it's essentially a culmination of 2 decades of work for you and however much time for Claire of being in this space and really paying attention to what works, what's not worked, and the importance that customers can provide to you if you're willing to ask.
Yep, that's right.
That's cool. Now, at the time of this recording, we're not really sure what the future of Twitter actually is, but how can people find you on Twitter and anywhere else online that you would like to send people to?
Yes. Oh, don't say that. I'm not ready to give up on Twitter. I've been on Twitter since like 2008. So I might go down with you. I might go down with that ship, I swear. So on Twitter, I'm GGIIAA, even though I could have gotten my first name at that time. I did not take it. And so, yes, very findable on Twitter, LinkedIn too, but much more so on Twitter. But forgetthefunnel.com is really the best place to go. You can learn about our sprints, our advisory, and of course the book. And we even have a pro membership. We didn't talk about that a lot, but we do have a community of practitioners and founders and service providers inside of our community that is super fun. And, we do office hours and all kinds of stuff in there. So that's another thing that people might want to check out.
Very cool. And my last question is, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you run into obstacles and things that require a little reshift of your mindset. Any kind of mantra or thought, quote that you like to turn back to get you over whatever that obstacle could be?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind for me is really when in doubt, what is in the best interest of your customers. So, and that's, I feel like I'm a broken record with this, but genuinely, especially when you're thinking about marketing and growth, right? We tend to sort of look outwards and we look to the experts and we read books and we listen to podcasts and we get all this inspiration. And I'm definitely not saying that we shouldn't do that. We need to continue to do that in an ongoing way. But as long as we can bring it back to who is our best customer and what is the most effective and applicable and highly resonant experience that we can create for them, at the end of the day, a lot of answers, like the answers to all of our questions, they live inside the heads of our best customers. We just got to know to listen and to get it out so that we can then take all that inspiration from out in the world in the marketing space and really apply it in a way that's going to be effective and stop the guesswork. So when in doubt, what is in it for your customers? What is the problem that you're solving for your customers? That tends to answer almost any challenge, especially when it comes to growth.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Gia, for being here on the Lead Generation today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Lead Generation podcast from Leadpages. Take a moment now to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. Then head over to leadpages.com/podcast for show notes, bonus resources, and more ways to elevate your business. Thanks for listening.